Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Bobby Ann Cox, and I'm here as the Director of Stop NY Corruption. I'd like to thank everybody who's come to cover this occasion. I'd also like to thank Congressman Zeldin for being here and Congresswoman Tenney for being here, and all of the elected officials and local community leaders who are here today. So Stop NY Corruption is a 501c4 organization that we have organized, and it's a group of civic-minded New Yorkers who've come together to basically oppose the corruption that's going on in Albany. This is not a partisan issue. This is not about left or right. This is not about being a Republican or being a Democrat. This is about the Constitution. This is about the will of the people of New York. And what's going on in Albany is absolutely outrageous. We have the political will of the politicians in Albany overruling the will of the people, and this is completely unacceptable. The Constitution is not optional. The Constitution is required. And the Constitution is actually the highest law of the land. So that the political elites in Albany want to ignore our Constitution and want to use it for their own, or ignore it for their own political gain, is horrific. The Constitution was written to keep the politicians in check. It was not written to keep the people in check. And therefore, when we see corrupt politicians in Albany that want to use the courts to further their political gain, it's absolutely unacceptable. What's going on right now is that your vote, which is the most powerful tool that you have as a New Yorker or as an American citizen in general, your vote is under attack. The political elites in Albany want to redraw the district lines for the congressional districts for next year. This is completely unconstitutional because we just had the districts drawn last year, and our Constitution is clear that you draw the lines and then they stay for 10 years until the next census. In this case, that would be 2030. But therefore, it's a violation of the Constitution to redraw those lines in between that 10-year period. So what do we see here? Well, we've got the Constitution saying we can't redraw the lines. We have the political elites in Albany saying they want to redraw the lines. Of course, there's a lawsuit raging about this, and it's going to be heard in front of the Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York State, next week on the 15th of November. Our Constitution outlaws gerrymandering because gerrymandering is the manipulation of the people's votes. Furthermore, a recent poll of likely voters found that an overwhelming 81% of New Yorkers believe that gerrymandering is a form of cheating. An alarming 76% of voters believe that gerrymandering denies them their civil right to choose their members of Congress through competitive elections. And a striking 78% of voters believe that gerrymandering leads to more corruption. 72% think it allows political party bosses to pick the members of Congress instead of the voters. I believe that the Court of Appeals will rule correctly in this case, and that they will uphold the Constitution, that they will not allow these maps to be redrawn again. But no matter, we still have to remain diligent. We have to understand what is going on around us and what is going on in the halls of Albany. I implore you to please join with me to protect your vote. It is the most sacred thing as an American and as a New Yorker. In the New York State Constitution, our right to vote, suffrage, is second only to the Bill of Rights. So what you can do to help, please go to our website. It's stopnycorruption.com. Please sign the petition there on the website and share that website with your friends and family. Post it on your social media. Help us spread the word. Here today with me, I have like-minded, concerned citizens, and two of them that I'm going to announce next were both members of the New York State Legislature when in 2014, the voters in New York stood up and said, we don't want the legislature to draw these maps anymore. In 2014, we made a constitutional amendment here in New York State by the will of the people to say that that process of drawing these maps is now going to go to an independent redistricting commission. However, what we see today is now a political power grab, where the political party in charge wants more power, and they want to redo those maps, but it is not the will of the people. So I'm going to introduce now Congressman Lee Zeldin, who's here today to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby, and thank you for what you are doing with this effort. And it's great to be here with Congresswoman Tenney. The two of us were in the state legislature when this constitutional amendment was passed. Happy Veterans Day. We wouldn't have a constitution. We wouldn't have a right to vote. We wouldn't have a country if not for all of our men and women who have served. And with us, our concerned citizens, including veterans, and I thank all the elected officials, the community leaders, and the veterans who are here with us today. In 2014, when voters went to the polls, it was a statewide ballot. This isn't a poll that we're referencing from 2014. We're talking about an actual statewide vote where Republicans and Democrats and independents voted to amend New York State's constitution to get rid of hyper-partisan gerrymandering and instead have a 10-person independent redistricting commission. So there was a second bite at the apple that was attempted just a few years ago, where a new amendment came up to the people November of 2021. They wanted to get rid of this amendment from 2014. They wanted to change the Constitution. These corrupt power brokers in Albany wanted that second bite at the apple. The voters of New York, Republicans and Democrats and independents, rejected that attempt to amend the Constitution. So twice, statewide voters of all parties came together to make it clear that we do not want hyper-partisan gerrymandering done by the state legislature. That wasn't good enough for these corrupt power brokers in Albany. They wanted a third bite at the apple. This case ended up in the courts. The Court of Appeals ruled in 2022 that the Constitution is clear. The will of New Yorkers is clear. There will be no hyper-partisan gerrymandering by the state legislature. A special master drew New York's House lines, which resulted in some of the most competitive races in the entire country. And we have a delegation now that is pretty evenly split between Democrats and Republicans. These are fair lines. Constituents have their congressmen have their constituents. And now there's this threat of blowing that up because these corrupt power brokers in Albany want another bite at the apple. And now here we are with this Court of Appeals case on November 15th. The Court of Appeals is being targeted to get used and abused. Essentially, what the Court of Appeals is being asked to do is ignore the merits of the case, ignore the New York State Constitution, ignore the will of the people, and still give the power back to the state legislature to do a hyper-partisan gerrymander. The Court of Appeals justices should be outraged that they're being targeted like this. They should not allow their institution to be eroded like this. When Claudia and I were serving the state legislature all those years ago, it was Republicans and Democrats in the state legislature who passed the bill twice as part of that process to bring it to a statewide vote and amend the state constitution. It came from advocacy of what is referred to as good government groups outside of the Capitol, League of Women Voters, Common Cause New York, and others. This was truly a nonpartisan effort. It wasn't just bipartisan. It was beyond that. There was no partisanship in this. Just everyone was coming together as New Yorkers. Left, right, center, liberal, moderate, conservative. And now, those who currently control Albany want us to just ignore all of it. We're here today in Rochester. Bobby Ann and I with Claudia, we're just in Buffalo. We'll be in Syracuse after this. It's important for New Yorkers to not just know what's going on inside of the legislature. It's important to not only know what's going on inside of the executive branch of government. It's important for New Yorkers to know what's going on in the judicial branch of government. There are cases before the New York State Court of Appeals that come and go that are important, and New Yorkers don't even know that a case is being heard. Well, I'm grateful for all the members of the media who are here today to make sure that your listeners are aware of what the Court of Appeals will be hearing next week in Buffalo on November 15th. It's important for all concerned New Yorkers to be aware, to make sure that your will, your prior votes are not ignored, that our Constitution is respected, and that the Court of Appeals is not targeted and eroded the way that these corrupt power brokers intend. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. We served together in the state legislature. We served together in the House. She is a dynamic representative, a tenacious fighter, a treasure for her constituents. It was an honor to serve with her. And I'm so grateful that she's taking the time to be at all three press conferences today. Claudia.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Bobby. I just want to say thank you to the media, everyone here. Thank you to our veterans. I know Lee served and still serves, I believe, as a reservist in uniform. I want to make a special mention. Today is the Marine Corps birthday. I want to make a special mention to the Marines. My son served in the Marine Corps and is also a reservist as well. So without them, we wouldn't have the freedoms that we enjoy as a nation, which are certainly under attack, especially in Albany and potentially in Washington as well. And I think Lee described kind of the timeline of this, but one way that I fit into this whole equation is when I served in the state legislature, the famous, horrible gerrymandering of 2012, which is what caused this 2014 realization, this eureka moment where the Democrats and Republicans came together and said, we can't have partisan gerrymandering done by the legislature anymore. I was actually representing a district that had the shores of Lake Ontario in Oswego County, and my district was changed in what was called the 101st Assembly District in 2012 to actually go from all the way up there, all the way down to Orange County, where my constituents were actually commuting to New York City. Most of them were part of a bedroom communities going to New York City. They were firemen, they were police officers, and other people who were actually working in New York City. And that was part of the gross gerrymander. It was described as a debacle. It was described as the biggest crime in redistricting that year. I remember the head of redistricting that year said to me, oh, you know, you're going to have to do a lot of miles on your car, but you're going to be famous for having the longest district created in New York history. And I was like, well, it isn't about me. This is about disenfranchising the people who I represent, the people who were part of 7 counties, little bits and pieces, who were all disenfranchised by having a member that was so, you know, I think I spent $800 a month just on gas to get to every part of the district. It was totally unfair to them. And this is what it comes down to at the grassroots level. The people spoke out and actually demanded to get rid of this partisan gerrymandering, and that's why we had this constitutional amendment in 2014, and which the people voted for, as you said, as Lee described. But this led to even more problems coming up for me in terms of elections with some of the disenfranchisement of voters, which is why I founded the Election Integrity Caucus in 2021 in the House of Representatives, the only one of its kind actually in the entire Congress of the United States. And it's important that we remember we are a self-governing constitutional republic. We are founded on the principle of self-governance. That means the people shall govern under the 10th Amendment. And when you disenfranchise the voters and you take their sacred right to vote away from them, you have undermined their ability to actually be representatives of our government and to elect the representatives from their region. And one citizen, one vote is something that I strongly believe in. And Bobby Ann, I love that you cited the New York State Constitution. Article 2 is about suffrage. It is the second most important thing behind New York enacting a Bill of Rights in Article 1 of the New York's Constitution. So fast forward today, here we are in a situation where we actually have competitive districts in upstate New York and all around the region. We have districts that have met the standard test of the Voting Rights Act. And now the Democrats are suing to overturn the will of the people in this lawsuit, this very important lawsuit that will be heard by the Court of Appeals. This is very important because most people don't know about it. And that's why we are traversing across the state, so people are aware, so the media knows, so our constituents are aware of what they're trying to do to subvert their sacred right to vote. There is no more profound statement of self-governance than voting. In the Election Integrity Conference, we have a lofty goal. It is that every citizen vote in every election. I understand that may not be possible, but we also want to make sure the integrity of each vote is protected. And this is another way of manipulating that process to prevent citizens from getting their vote counted and actually having their vote matter. And that's why it's so important that we come out every day and make sure that the people know what's happening, what could potentially be happening in our courts, with the Court of Appeals, and the manipulation of this process by the Democrats in Washington, along with the Democrats in the state legislature and also in Albany. So we are just grateful to have all these fine representatives from this region, great turnout, and people who really care. And this, again, is a nonpartisan issue. We really appreciate Bobby Ann coming here from her citizens organization along with others. And as Lee referenced, the League of Women Voters is a left-leaning organization. They typically don't support Republican causes. They have actually done an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, on this case, condemning what has happened and standing up for the fair lines and what the process was last year, why the people got a fair lines from the extreme gerrymander that was originally conceived last year. And so that's why we're all here, and we appreciate that, and I think we'll take questions. So thank you all, I appreciate it, and thank you to everyone.
What would be a good criteria for districting lines? Because, like you said, many people don't even know how it's done now, or if it is done to try to swing votes or whatever. What is the good criteria for lines and where?
Well, there's an easy guide. It's called the New York State Constitution. It talks about considering communities of interest and making them as compact as possible, and trying to maintain that level. And also, there is a new provision that actually says don't move members to try to remove them from their districts and things like that, and not to do this based on politics, but do it based on the best possible representation of individuals in each community without violating the Voting Rights Act, which is a federal act, and also without separating communities of interest. You'll see there's towns and villages and cities that are all considered as part of the gerrymander, or I don't want to say gerrymandering, the redistricting reapportionment process. But I know Lee might want to add to that.
Well, I would just also add that there's that process includes hearings around the state, and it takes time, and it shouldn't be rushed. And the goal here of those who want the Court of Appeals to rule the wrong way, the goal of people who don't want the court to rule on the merits of the Constitution or the will of the people, they want to try to change these House maps up instantly in time for next year's election. And there's no way to do that without an extreme rush job, one that likely won't have the hearings across the state where New Yorkers are able to weigh in with their concerns. There are parts of the state where you start cutting up a particular town, a group of people. I think of areas down in New York City, for example. In Brooklyn, you have an Orthodox Jewish population in Crown Heights and Borough Park and Williamsburg. Strategically, you start cutting them up so that their block of vote doesn't have as much sway. Or the Asian American vote in around Flushing, or in Sunset Park in Brooklyn. You start cutting up groups so that their voice isn't as strong. Whether it's done intentionally or unintentionally, when you do this as an extreme rush job, the process is one that is going to end up probably intentionally and unintentionally creating mistakes. Just one other thing before I turn it back over to Bobby Ann to close. I want to thank the town of Gates. I can't tell you how many times I've been through Monroe County, been through the region, and the town of Gates is always open and welcome for so many exceptional causes. And of course, as we were pulling up here today, we're hearing all about the work here at Gates monitoring our veterans here on Veterans Day. So no one should be surprised by that, but I want to say thank you to our hosts.
So So I just want to add one last thing. When I say that this is a power grab and it's going against the will of the people, in 2014, that constitutional amendment that changed our New York State Constitution so that these districting lines would be drawn not by the legislature, but instead by an independent redistricting commission. That commission is made up of, it's split 50-50. It's half is Democrats, half is Republicans, and the commission is supposed to come up with these maps that we are supposed to vote under and live by. So when the will of the people is being overstepped and ignored, that is something that New Yorkers need to know about and need to hear about, and that's why I am heading up this organization, Stop New York Corruption. And I do want to say, it is not a partisan issue. I am not Republican, I'm not conservative, I'm actually a Democrat, which has nothing to do with this, because this is about the Constitution and the voters of New York, and we are a tremendous mix across the political spectrum, and the concerned citizens of Stop NY Corruption hope that you will join us. Please go to our website, stopnycorruption.com, sign the petition, sign up for updates, stay involved, and help us spread the word. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.